Thank you, Oliver. I think that's possibly the first time I've ever heard anybody on stage actually confessing to liking being considered a guinea pig for something. But, it's good news. So we're now going to move on straight on to our next panel. So the third panel of the overall conference. We're looking now at green energy and how we can innovate for that. The moderator of this panel is Piotr Samson, who is the DGAC in Poland and also the chairman of the ASC Management Board. Piotr and the panel, please.
Buenos dias, Sevilla. Hola, amigos. Let me first start with expressing the words of gratitude to EASA and to our fabulous hosts, our Spanish colleagues, Ana, Montserrat. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the great event we had yesterday in the evening. It's really a pleasure to be here in Sevilla and in Spain. Yesterday there was a lot of discussion about the new designs, type of propulsion, a lot about the new regulations, what can we do better, how can we innovate. But I believe there was one topic which was repeated many times, and it was the supply of the energy and the new fuel. And this is basically the topic of our today's discussion. How can we innovate and how we accelerate with respect to the new types of the energy, sustainable energy, and in particular, the new sustainable fuel. Today, I have the pleasure of moderating the panel with 5 very esteemed speakers who are specializing in the sustainable fuels. So let me present our speakers. To my right, Mrs. Ana Salazar, who is the Sustainability Director at AENA, so the Spanish airports. Ana is an engineer by profession and also holds an MBA. Next to Ana, we have Carlos Diaz Garcia, the senior manager from Repsol. Repsol is the biggest producer of fuel in Spain. Next to Carlos, we've got Pablo Perez Ilana from CINEA, and CINEA stands for European Commission Agency implementing the Green Deal EU programs. This is a very important gentleman because this gentleman represents the agency that distributes money. So, it's great to have Pablo here, and then we have the Carlos Lopez de la Osa from the Transport and Environment. This is the big NGO, the non-government organization. And last but not least, we have Jonas Laukia for EASA. Jonas works in EASA as an environmental expert. What also I think it's important to mention, all of us, as we sit here, we are engineers. And I think this is a good sign that a lot about the things we are talking about today during the conference is about the engineering, a new approach from the engineering point of view. So let me start with the first question, and the first question will be directed to Carlos Diaz from Repsol. You are the producer, so I think this is one of our main topics. Carlos, what can we do to accelerate and boost the production of the sustainable fuels?
Thank you, Piotr. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share with you our projects and our strategy. Yeah, indeed, sustainable aviation fuel is a key element in our strategy to be a net zero emission company in 2050. And to do that, we have to be able to put to the market low carbon fuel. And for this, we have initiated a transformation plan of our site, of our refineries, that consists mainly in the progressive replacement of the main feedstock that we use, that is the crude oil, but low carbon feedstocks from biological origin, mainly residues, waste and residues from biological origin. But this is not enough to obtain low carbon fuels. We need to do more. We need to replace also the natural gas that we use to produce hydrogen, to produce heat, to produce power in our refineries. And also we need to increase the share of renewable energy, the renewable electricity that we use in our refineries. All these elements combined with the production of green hydrogen and with the use of technologies to capture the CO2, with the combination of all these elements, we will be able to put on the market very low carbon footprints fuels in the market. Regarding the sustainable aviation fuels, we have been pioneers in Spain with the production of SAF. We are putting currently in the market co-processing sustainable aviation fuels by FR route, hydroprocessing in our existing units. And also, hopefully, by the end of this year, of 2023, we are going to start the operation of our new advanced biofuels plant in Cartagena, which we will be able to produce more than 1,200,000 tons of sustainable aviation fuels per year. So this is a quantity that, this is more than the quantity that we estimate Spain is going to need to fulfill the refuel aviation mandate in 2030. So this is a reality. This is not a project that we want to do. This is a project that we are doing and that we are going to put in operation in very few months. And as third, let's say, flag project, we can talk about e-fuels, e-SAF. Our board of directors have approved recently an investment for a demo plant in Bilbao that will be able to produce and to put in the market small quantities of e-SAF, combining green hydrogen with the CO2 capture in one of our refineries in Bilbao, Petronor. So this is the first step to think about an industrial scale of e-fuels, e-SAF, in the medium or long term. So this is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have to face as a company in the coming years and probably in the coming decades. But we are convinced that we are part of the solution, so we will do it.
Thank you very much. I think this is a great news for all of us that the fuel will be there, the new types of fuel. But then the question is how we will transport and connect the fuel, the producer, with the aircraft. And then in this value chain, we've got the airport. So here we've got Anna from Aena. Anna, can you elaborate? Are there any bottlenecks in terms of the logistics and also maybe the storage of this new types of energies at the airports?
Well, talking about SAF, we have some good news because the SAF is, as you know, it's a drop-in fuel. So we don't need to have to make important modifications in the infrastructure, in the logistic infrastructure to transport the SAF. In fact, the SAF can be blended in bigger percentages gradually, without any change. Mm-hmm. And even I can explain that in Spain we have a very important advantage, competitive advantage, because we have a logistic network that connects the main refineries with the main airports. So we can assure very easily and in a very efficient way, economically talking and environmentally talking, the compliance of the refuel aviation regulation. We can assure it because we can apply the mass balance procedure. So each company can pay whatever quantity of SAF that they want, and all of this stuff is transported in the logistic network. And even we can give service to different percentages of SAF if the airlines want to consume more or less. So these are good news. The main problem talking about SAF is the price gap, for sure. And our role talking about this problem is to try to impulse innovation projects, because as Carlos explained, I think the raw materials that the conventional SAF is using are not unlimited. And we need to to make an evolution to the power-to-liquid and the waste-to-liquid technologies to assure that we will have all the production that we need to cover all the demand. And one important thing that we should think about also is that we should think about the best way to incentivize the consumption and the production of SAF in the very next moment, in the beginning of the application of refuel. Because in this moment we will have less demand and the price will be higher. I think if we talk about hydrogen or electricity, we will have a very bigger challenge, because especially with hydrogen, because the logistic network and the logistic system in airports is not prepared for hydrogen. And the hydrogen is very different, physically and chemically talking, about the properties, and the network is not compatible with the hydrogen. So we will have to give service in the airports in the future to different technologies of aircrafts, and we don't know what percentage of each type of technology will the airlines want to implement. So it's very difficult for us. It's a very big challenge. And not also talking about aircrafts, but not only talking about aircrafts, but also talking about ground handlers. The Spanish regulation fixed that we will have to give service to ground handlers with hydrogen in 2013, the 5 main airports in Spain. So we are right now working and thinking about the possibilities to give service to this demand and to comply with the regulation. And electricity, of course, is a very important challenge too. We need to give service to all the consumers and all the customers in the airport with green energy. And so as we are developing a very important project in AENA, that is the photovoltaic plant, and we will produce all the energy that we are consuming by implementing photovoltaic plants in the main airports. So we have a lot of work.
Thank you, and congratulations. That your plans and a lot of many achievements. I think the very interesting and important thing is this logistics from the refineries to the airports, because I think this is one of the key and a crucial elements. So congratulations. Both of you mention an element of the incentives, and sometimes it can be the financial incentives. And now I would like to ask our next speaker, Pablo Perez, who represents the SINAO, the EU agency that is supervising many of the EU funds which are related to the Green Deal. Pablo, from your perspective, can you show us an overview? What mechanism, what instruments are available for providing these incentives and financing the new projects?
Thank you, Piotr, and thank you, EASA, and thank you, AESA. Muchas gracias. Thank you for this opportunity. In fact, in this agency of the European Commission, CINEA, we are in charge of most of the Green Deal programs in terms of the implementation. So actually, you may be familiar with the research and innovation part, currently called Horizon Europe. This is a part that actually, in our case in CINEA, we are implementing most of the energy research EU funding, also the totality of the climate science research, and a good part of the transport, including aviation. When I say transport, I mean actually all the modes of transport, where we see very interesting also developments in other modes that could be also inspiring for aviation. We talk about electric vehicles or even batteries. But what is the beauty of this agency is not only research, but let's say to understand the issues, to devise and develop and demonstrate solutions up to, for instance, TRL6, but actually to move up into the upscaling and deployment of solutions. And there we have programs like the Connecting Europe facility for infrastructure solutions, which is not only about these trans-European corridors of energy and transport, it's also for transport hubs like airports. Programs like LIFE, which is more on nature-based solutions, and the new kid on the block, the new program Innovation Fund, which is extremely interesting because it is the investment arm of the ETS, of the emission trading system. And in fact, as you know well, aviation is also part of it. So it's open to all sectors that are under ETS. And because it's actually reinvesting revenues from the ETS, the budget is increasing with the carbon price. So it's interesting that 2 years ago, when I was presenting this, the figure was much smaller, and now we see this increasing. So actually, Piotr, you were asking me to highlight some examples. It's a bit difficult, you know, in a few minutes, but I will try to highlight a few that are first of this kind in terms of research. Of course, projects that we are managing collaborative research were the pioneering in understanding not only many years ago the CO2 effect in climate, but actually non-CO2 effects. When we are talking about NOx, we are talking about contrails, and as you know, approximately 2/3 of the total impact of climate of aviation. These projects were pioneering that not only to understand, but also to reduce at source, like combustion, so a linear combustion for less NOx. And also, we have projects, for instance, led by DLR on climate-optimized trajectories. So depending on temperature, humidity, and altitude. And this is very important because also this can inform future regulations in relation to the monitoring, to the reporting, monitoring, and verification for non-CO2 in the future. It's very interesting, so understanding and devising solutions. But you know, we have been talking a lot about electrification. And some years ago, when actually the major players in joint undertakings were not addressing hybrid electric propulsion or hydrogen propulsion, we had collaborative research projects that actually enabled the first full electric aircraft made in the EU and certified in the EU, in projects where EASA was also well involved, so helping in the debate yesterday between the regulation and innovation. So this is also a good example in projects like that. And just to give you a little example in connection to the next panel and the previous presentation, last year, one of our projects in southern Denmark actually had demonstrated the first self-charging drone on the fly. So it's a project actually to monitoring power grids, railway infrastructure, and you know, instead of coming back to recharge the base, it's directly on the power grid, and that was also first worldwide. In terms of electrification, of course, we are doing a lot also for airports, and as Anna was referring, we have projects actually addressing the challenges, firstly for ground vehicles, in terms of, you know, all the requirements in different circumstances, in different, for instance, weather conditions at different airports, also even pioneering a bit using hydrogen vehicles. So projects that are actually very large, actually 3, led by Paris Charles de Gaulle, led by Schiphol, and by Brussels Airport, but then also with other airports that are replicating the new solutions that are brought to these projects. And I'm very glad to also to announce that with Connecting Europe facility, we increased the support of projects all over Europe. 2 weeks ago, actually, AENA was awarded a grant to help with the charging points on 37 airports in the network. But of course, we are talking a lot about energy here. I could spend hours talking about our public-private partnership that we are implementing fully on batteries, also on electric vehicles, how to go beyond the lithium-ion batteries, future solid-state batteries. A lot of that actually it's done for automotive industry. But we have a lot to learn also for aviation, and we start to see some projects of next generation batteries that actually aviation stakeholders are getting into it. So especially the weight, but also safety, fire issues. So we have a lot also to benefit from that. But maybe to highlight a bit inspiring projects, of course, still not at the deployment level in terms of energy on synthetic fuel. This project is actually was the first solar fuel worldwide, at the beginning at laboratory scale, and then it was actually scaled up to increase the TRL in a plant that you see on the picture. It is actually near Madrid, and what this project is doing actually is kind of reversing the combustion process. So if you want a kind of photosynthesis and oil production. So it's taking water, concentrated CO2, and concentrated solar energy via a patented reactor with cerium. Then it provides, it produces syngas and sustainable alternative fuel. Of course, we are at a stage where we still need to increase the efficiency and the throughput, but it's quite promising. Now a new project is starting to building up on this, and we're looking forward one day to reach the conditions to deploy. And when we talk about deployment, of course, innovation fund I mentioned before, we start to see some projects for aviation. I will give just 2 examples, and we are looking forward to see more, so encouraging you to apply for it. The picture there is actually related to a plant in Sweden. On the one hand, combining a 200 megawatt electrolyzer for green hydrogen and a waste-to-energy plant, taking the CO2 and then combining with gas fermentation and other process to generate sustainable alternative fuels to result in 2.7 megatons of CO2 equivalent saved in 10 years of operation. So that's one example, large scale. And in a smaller scale, and with this I finish my intervention on the Innovation Fund, we have a project actually at Rome Airport where with Fraunhofer and Enel, they are not only investing massively in solar panels to electrify the airport, to have this energy, but actually also they are collecting massive amounts of car batteries that have been used, that are already below the 75% capacity, so it cannot be used any longer for cars, but can be reused for stationary applications. So actually, it's a way, of course, then to manage the energy, so helping not only to decarbonize, but also for the circular economy. So to avoid the waste that all these massive amounts of batteries will mean. It's a nice combination. It's a smaller scale project, but I think it's also worth mentioning. With this, I finish for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pablo. That was very, very interesting. We heard many about the, let's say, financial incentives and the availability of the funds, which I think are very important. But now I'd like to give the floor to our other Carlos. What can we do from the society perspective, from the civil society, to promote this new types of fuel, new type of energy?
Thank you, Piotr, and thank you, EASA and ISA for organizing and for giving us, as an environmental organization, the opportunity to be here and to bring the voice of civil society. So, of course, when it comes to decarbonizing aviation, there are a lot of things that we need to do and that we need to do right. So we could talk about deploying the right technologies, setting strong sustainability criteria when it comes to SAF, when it comes to the feedstock that we're using to produce SAF, to the green energy requirements that we need, to deploy and to invest in the right types of disruptive technologies as well. For sure, we need all that. But we have many members in the panel who are really knowledgeable as well on those topics. So let me bring 2 points to the table. Number one, if we look at the decarbonization pathways from the industry, we could talk, for example, about ATAC's Waypoint 2050. You look several scenarios heavily reliant on technology and energy, but in all of them, you see how emissions keep growing after 2030 and only then begin to decline. If you look at that, it's quite easy to realize that the aviation sector with that emissions trajectory would overrun its carbon budget to remain below 1.5 degrees. Number 2 element, looking at RefuelEU, the requirement is to provide a 35% of synthetic kerosene in the European Union by 2050. If we combine that with current traffic projections, some simple maths tell us that we will need approximately 14% of the EU's electricity production by that year to comply with that requirement alone. That is equivalent to 50 nuclear power plants, 50, or to 15 square kilometers of solar photovoltaic panels, which means covering the entire Sevilla province or half of Belgium with panels. So we're in a safety conference. Let me speak a bit of safety jargon. If you read the IPCC reports, it's pretty easy to realize that if we fail to meet Paris agreements, it looks pretty much like a catastrophic failure. But if we look at the aviation plan today, it looks a bit like overly reliant on the deployment of technology, on the availability of energy, but it looks a bit like all eggs in one basket. As a safety engineers, maybe we can ask some questions. What if the technologies do not get there at the right pace or deliver on promises? What if the energy is just not there? Or what if the decarbonization plan is not good enough for society? If society says, we don't want aviation to be really late in decarbonizing compared to other sectors, and then the social license wouldn't be there. So it looks a lot that there's not a really serious plan B if those things don't work. I'm not saying they won't work, but they might not work. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Superaero. It's the first aeronautical space university in the world. And there was a big debate about the future of aviation. And most people in the room, researchers, civil society, environmental organizations, and even students, were in favor of questioning one of the key elements of all these decarbonization roadmaps of the aviation sector. And that is the ever-growing sector, the fact that the sector will continue to grow. All of us in the room, except for the industry, were questioning that assumption and thinking about what the aviation sector could look like if growth wasn't an imposed variable, but something we could play with. Because in a smaller sector would be an easier to decarbonize sector, and also is the best chance to quickly reduce emissions if we are to comply with a 1.5 degree carbon budget. I know it's not an easy topic, but it's my role as a representative of civil society to put it on the table. There are also many questions about how to get there, and it's not easy. So there are ideas floating already, as you might have heard, short-haul flight bans, airport caps, taxation, like many things are being discussed. Probably none of them are perfect or even good enough. But the first thing is we need to start the debate. And as much as possible, we need civil society researchers, but also we need to engage industry and policymakers in that debate. So what I'm calling here in this first intervention is for the aviation industry, for policymakers to embrace this safety attitude, to think about the plan that we have today, to have a look at it with a critical eye and say, okay, what will happen if the energy is not there or not enough? What will happen if the technologies don't get there at the right pace? And to engage in this debate about how a sector which might be smaller could look like, because also a smaller sector could be more sustainable and more resilient in the face of a world which will likely be very much constrained on climate and energy.
Thank you very much. I think it's very interesting input, which now leads us to our last speaker, Jonas from EASA. And I think based on what Carlos has said, the question is, what can EASA as a regulator, in fact the regulator that now was credited with this role of the safeguard of the refuel aviation, from the regulator point of view, what can we do? Can we do anything about the plan B, the preparation of the plan B, as Carlos has said? Jonas, can you elaborate on this?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good to be here, everyone. Yes, this is definitely a fascinating question, and there's lots of developments in the regulatory field to try to address all of this that has been discussed. Maybe during this opening intervention, I just want to focus on a few of those. I think it goes without saying that we need to talk about Refuel EU regulation in this environment. This was already mentioned by our acting executive director in his opening speech, but the Refuel EU is really a key policy that we are really much looking forward to implementing in the upcoming years. So just recapping the idea of the Refuel EU, it basically sets a minimum blending mandate of sustainable aviation fuels with conventional aviation fuels, starting by 2% in 2025. That may sound like a small amount, 2%, what is that? But if you compare that with the current scale of SAF usage in aviation, it is actually quite a lot already. So there will be a mandate for fuel suppliers, so Repsol and other fuel supplier companies, to actually ensure that starting from 2025, there will be a minimum of 2% being blended in the European aviation fueling system. The mandate will grow over time up to 70% by 2050. So coming to EASA's role in all this, the regulation puts EASA in a central role in implementing the regulation. So first of all, EASA will have an access to the Union Energy Database, where we can actually confirm that the minimum share of SAF has been blended to the fueling infrastructure. There will be a reporting line from aircraft operators, and I know there's many of them in the room today, to report to EASA on the fuel that has been uplifted for their flights departing from Union airports. One twist in the Refuel EU regulation is that there is a requirement for operators to uplift at least 90% of the fuel that is required to operate flights. So this is to avoid the so-called tankering, where airlines would uplift more fuels for economical reasons at certain airports. There's also a role for airports under Refuel EU to report on how infrastructure has been adapted to accommodate access to sustainable aviation fuels and other novel energy sources. And of course, it's important to report on any difficulties that might be there. So all this is covered by the reporting requirement towards our agency. Quite importantly, on an annual basis, we are preparing an annual report that will include information such as amount of SAF uplifted at European airports, the quantities of the SAF, so what has been the production pathway, but also, and quite importantly, also for the discussion on non-CO2 emissions, the aromatic contents, the sulfur, and such quantities of the fuel, so that we can track these qualifications of the fuel over time. So all this will lead in a quite a significant upcoming data source on sustainable aviation fuels. One thing I forgot to remember at the beginning is that in addition to the SAF mandate, there is also a sub-mandate on e-fuels. So the decision makers are aiming to put more emphasis on e-fuels or synthetic fuels to increase the production of those potentially very powerful fuels in terms of life cycle emission reductions in the future. So Refuel EU is obviously something that the agency is looking forward to implement. We have an internal project running to prepare agency for the new role. I believe next year will be more like setting up the reporting streams and IT systems, and starting from 2025, the reporting itself will begin. It needs to be mentioned as well, but we are putting together a stakeholder group and an authority group to liaise with the stakeholders and to ensure that they know how the reporting is expected to work towards the agency. So in addition to the Refuel EU, I wanted to mention a couple of other things. First of them being the carbon pricing at EU level, because it goes quite hand in hand with the SAF discussion and the Refuel EU regulation. So I believe many of you know that aviation activities within the European Economic Area have been covered by the emissions trading system since 2012 already. That emissions trading system is already now providing an incentive for airlines to use SAF, because if an airline reports SAF usage as a part of its ETS reporting, that fuel can be claimed as zero emissions. So that is an incentive for airlines. It is true that many of the SAF, on a life cycle emission basis, they don't achieve zero emissions, but under ETS, there has been this additional incentive for airlines to claim SAF usage under ETS. Under the revised EU ETS directive, there is also quite interesting additional component to reserve 20 million ETS allowances to actually meet the price gap between SAF and conventional fossil fuels for those airlines who are using SAF. So airlines in the future, they will be able to actually apply additional ETS allowances to cover the price gap between conventional fuels and sustainable aviation fuels. And maybe lastly, since we are having this cross-cutting theme here of a flight from Sevilla to Sumatra, especially thinking about the leg from Spain to Sumatra, I think it goes without saying that international cooperation is really key in terms of ensuring that our partner states, as well outside of Europe, are following these environmental ambitions. From ICAO level, we do have the CORSIA scheme, which stands for Carbon Offsetting and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation. Both Indonesia, so in Sumatra, and Spain are voluntarily participating to that scheme already. It's not perfect, but it's a starting point and kind of illustrates the beauty and importance of international collaboration as well when we are addressing global problems such as the climate change.
Thank you, Jonas. Very, very interesting, and especially this point about the ETS and as an incentive for the SAF. I think it's critical for the economics and critical for the airlines, and I think that will be this is a very important element, and it should be, even more strongly emphasized because it's critical for the development. I think as we all discuss the topic, we have our common goal. We have the vision. We share this vision. I think it's great that all these participants representing a different organization, we all go, or at least directly in the same direction. So I think this is great. But I now have prepared some more detailed question to all of you, and if you can elaborate. And let me start with Carlos from Repsol. What kind of SAF feedstock and production pathways are the most promising ones looking into the future? What are the main issues in terms of the scaling up of the feedstock availability?
Yes, currently the 99% of installed capacity of SAF in the world is based in hydrogenation technology, EFA. That is one of the routes that is accepted by STM on the DEF Star 91. And this is not casual. Hydrogenation is a technology very well known in our industry, in the refining industry, because it's the technology that we have been using by many years to remove the sulfur in our conventional fuels, in the diesel and the kerosene. So it's normal that we have this technology available in our refineries. We can adapt the existing unit for lipidic residues, lipidic waste, to transform in renewable fuels, in SAF and also in HVO, renewable diesel. Well, but the problem of this technology is the raw material availability. It's known. If you look at the different reports that have been published in the last years, everybody said that we have not enough waste and residues from lipidic sources to cover the demand of fuels in Europe. So we have to be able to deploy and to develop other type of technologies capable to transform other type of residues. Other residues with high availability, like municipal solid waste, biomass, like forestry residues, agricultural residues, and for sure, also technologies capable to transform CO2 in liquids, in drop-in fuels. We have a pipeline of projects under evaluation. We can talk about gasification of biomass. We can talk about fermentation to obtain ethanol, and from the ethanol obtain SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. We can talk about synthetic gas from the gasification to make methanol, and from methanol jump to kerosene, or to do fisher traps. We have several routes, but the maturity of these technologies are not enough. We have not reference at the industrial scale, so we have to develop this technology and to jump to an industrial scale. This is a risk for the investment. This is a risk. And the main difference between hydrogenation and this type of technology is that in the hydrogenation, we have, let's say, expensive raw materials, but low capex, low investment. And these new technologies is the reverse. Very high investment, and using, let's say, more cheaper raw materials. But the investment are huge. We are talking about that, and a hydrogenation project, like our advanced biofuels plant in Cartagena that's going to be in operation this year. Well, this is around 200 million euros of investment. But when we want to go for an equivalent plant for gasification, for example, we are going to be near 1 billion euros. So we need to get to close the risk before to take the decision for investment. So, well, my vision is that there is not, or there will be not, a winner in terms of technology. This is a case-by-case situation. One project could be the best in one location with a particular availability of raw material in that location, close to a refinery or far from a refinery. So we need to develop all the technologies, compete together, and select the ones that is winner for that location. So in this sense, we have, as I mentioned before, we have the approval for a demo plant of e-fuel that maybe is the technology for the long term, the e-fuels, but the technology is not mature enough to go for an industrial scale. So we need the first step for a demo plant, and well, we hope to be able to learn what we have to do in case to take the decision to go for an industrial scale plant for e-fuel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Carlos, very interesting. And now let me move to Anna. Anna, from your perspective, what can we do better? Maybe you have some examples you can mention to improve the cooperation, the part of the value chain between the fuel supplier, the airport, and the airline.
Well, from my point of view, the ecological transition and energy management is one of the major challenges of the aviation in this moment. So we should assure the seamless coordination of all the decarbonization plans of the aviation ecosystem. Not only aviation ecosystem, but also energy producers and regulators. So we should define the right governance at a national level and at a European level to guarantee that we all in the ecosystem know what are the plans of the airlines, and they know our plans, and the ground handlers and the energy producers, because if not, we will delay the decarbonization. Because if some airline can operate hydrogen aircrafts in Madrid Barajas, and I don't have hydrogen logistic, they won't. They couldn't done. So it's very important to be totally coordinated. We have some good examples of coordination. We have been participating in subgroups at European level, at national level, and these groups are trying to impulse the innovation, the investment, and investigation in new raw materials. So I think this is a very good practice, but we need some other things. Maybe, as Jonas explained, we have this type of incentivization that comes from the regulation, from the ETS. Yeah. But maybe we could think about the US model and do something similar to the inflation mechanism that makes the SAF very, very cheap in the United States.
Okay.
On other hand, I think that it's very important also to work in the safety of the hydrogen operation, because the advanced fuels, sustainable aviation fuels, needs hydrogen. Maybe we could, we will have to manage hydrogen in the airports, and we have the necessity, or we have the need to be sure that the hydrogen management in the airports is safe. So it's very important to define the safety framework of the hydrogen.
Okay, thank you. Now let me move to Pablo. And here the question is, we heard a lot about the key projects managed by SINA. How can all the stakeholders work together in realizing the objectives of such projects?
Thank you, Piotr. In fact, when I was talking about research and innovation, I mean, these kind of examples, behind is not a single entity, a single stakeholder, but it's a real team of stakeholders. And it's really open to all types of entities. So I want to make clear, it's not just, universities and research centers, but it's also small and big industry. It's energy suppliers, also fleet operators, infrastructure operators, and also even local, national, and European authorities involvement, all insofar as needed to deliver the objectives of the project. So I would say there are 3 key points to ensure successful collaboration among the stakeholders in a project that typically runs for 3-4 years. First, it's clear purpose. Second is clear roles. And third, clear communication. So I say clear purpose is very, very important to keep always in mind this, what is the real objective of the project as a whole, beyond the specific narrow interests of each stakeholder and the specific circumstances. So this should be like the guiding North Star for the project, should be always kept as the direction and the engagement of all stakeholders together. Second is clear roles. And of course, experience shows the challenges raised at the interfaces. So it's important to know not only, always keeping in mind the purpose, so the why, but also clear who does what, by when, and for whom. And taking into account the diversity of the stakeholders we had, this is again crucial to ensure the timely accomplishment of the projects. And again here, very important also when we're talking about the engagement of authorities in innovation projects. No? And the third aspect is clear communication. And when I say clear communication, I mean not only communication among the stakeholders that are involved in specific tasks, but also between the stakeholders in those tasks and the work package leaders, or the coordinators who are orchestrating the actual collaboration in a project, and also the communication between the coordinator of the project and the granting authorities, so in this case, funding agency, CINEA. We are not just kind of bureaucrats, which is important to make sure that the EU taxpayers' monies are well invested, but also there to support you to deliver. So ultimately, what we want is the project to deliver in terms of results, to demonstrate new solutions, or also even to feedback to policy. So we are there to help you, to support you. Sometimes, as Alan said yesterday, to support you and to challenge you as well, to increase the output of the project. So this will be, in a nutshell, the three, let's say, main principles for a successful collaboration. And we are very glad that over decades of program management, we have some effective methodologies to ensure this. Clear purpose, clear roles, clear communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Carlos, now, the other Carlos, now back to you. Let's go back for a moment to the main topic of our or sub-team of the conference, flying from Seville to Sumatra in 2040. If you will have all the powers, in your hand, how will you see this travel? What kind of technologies should be used, and how we, in 2040, how should we get there from Seville to Sumatra?
Thank you. Well, after my previous message on reducing the sector, I don't know if anybody in the room is expecting me to say that the best flight to Sumatra is the one that does not happen. But I'm not going to say that, because aviation plays today an essential role in today's society and will hopefully still be the case in 2040. Having said that, I believe that the first and the best possible sustainable flight starts before the flight, with a fully informed passenger that receives all the information when booking the flight in terms of the environmental impact of that flight, of the energy consumption of that flight, a fair price as well that reflects the externalities, which today are probably not fully reflected in the price of flying. And only then, when that passenger has all that information, they're able to make a conscious choice and say, this flight is worth it or not. But the flight would still happen. So once each and every passenger has made this conscious decision to fly, then comes the technologies. So say flying from Sevilla to Sumatra, it will likely not happen directly from Sevilla, San Pablo, because it's a smaller airport. We might need to go to another airport. If we go to Lisbon or Palma de Mallorca, for example, a regional electric or hybrid electric plane would be a really good solution, because there are no infrastructure or very little infrastructures to connect quickly those two airports. If we think about, for example, Madrid, in that case, rail is an option. So why not looking at rail, because the infrastructure is there already and there's a very good service. Now moving to the long-haul leg of the flight between Europe or Spain and Sumatra, of course, we will need to use SAF, because for those, by 2040, probably zero-emission technologies such as hydrogen won't be there for such a long-haul flight. So we want to make sure that the SAF is as sustainable as possible, and so on. But we shouldn't forget that very likely more than half of the fuel that would be in that aircraft will still be fossil, if we look, for example, at Refuel EU targets. So how about, for example, cleaning up that kerosene as well? We've discussed before the reduction of sulfur, the optimization of the aromatic content, which we know might have an important effect on improving air quality around airports and reducing non-CO2 effects. On top of that, an optimized flight trajectory to, again, reduce non-CO2 effects and minimize fuel consumption as much as possible. So all those are key elements of an integrated flight that will be as sustainable as possible. But going back to my first point, it's not just the sustainability of the flight, it all begins with a conscious choice for passengers.
Thank you very much. This conscious choice, for me, it sounds like the eco-labeling project done by EASA. So, hopefully, EASA will complete the project and soon it will be available. I'm looking at Luke, but I think we are on our way there. And finally, Jonas, we've got a plan, we've got a direction, but what would be the flanking measures that can be taken to actually deliver the intended outcomes?
Yes, indeed. Since the label was mentioned, that is also included as a part of the Refuel EU regulation for EASA to develop a flight label that is intended to inform passengers on the carbon footprint of their intended travel. So I think we are really moving towards that direction at the agency to also focus on this before committing to fly kind of decisions by the consumers. Now, coming back to the question, sometimes you feel that there's a little bit of atmosphere in the discussions that the Refuel EU and the European approach is only on mandating SAF and kind of using the stick to increase the SAF usage in Europe. And quite often it is actually forgotten that on a European level there are various flanking measures and support measures to actually also provide the carrot side of the formula to the fuel producers and also to airlines. So maybe just covering a couple of highlights from the agency's side. We are actually initiating a project on something called EU Clearinghouse on SAF. So the concept of clearinghouse is really focusing on ensuring that new production pathways of SAF, potentially new feedstocks, can pass through the required approval processes to be eligible to be used in commercial airliners. So the agency is looking into this. We have a project upcoming to investigate the concept of an EU clearinghouse to potentially help SAF producers with a low risk to get through this testing and approval process, which can be quite demanding. It can be quite resource incentive, especially for smaller startup companies. So that's definitely a key so-called flanking measures that we are looking into. Another one is focusing on fuel standards, so really taking stock of the fuel quantities that we have in place right now, whether there could be ways to improve these fuel quantifications, for example, in terms of the aromatic content, in terms of the sulfur contents, and subsequent work that is required on European level. I just want to come back to this support ecosystem that is available. The other day, I checked the ICAO report on the long-term aspirational goal that was adopted by ICAO last year, so net zero 2050 for international aviation. And to support that goal, there was technical work and technical reports conducted by ICAO. And it also talks about the cost. So, for example, the cost for fuel suppliers to meet the goal, depending on the scenario that will be selected, ranges between 1,300 and 3,200 billion US dollars. So 1,300 to 3,200 billion US dollars to actually meet that goal, only from fuel suppliers and fuel producers' perspective. So the investment need is huge. It's absolutely massive. And of course, we need to find ways to tackle this. I think we had a very good starting point to talk about the ETS Innovation Fund. So that is one of the potential sources in Europe to scale up the production. Before going to the ETS Innovation Fund, there's of course the research side of things, so Horizon Europe, with quite substantial budget to accelerate, for example, new SAF production, but also novel technologies for aviation. There are other sources of support available from EU, including the Invest EU initiative, European Hydrogen Bank, etc., national incentive schemes, of course, as well. So there is an ecosystem of support. I think, and what I feel in the discussions is that we should work together to provide clearance and clarity to those potential applicants on how to actually benefit from this ecosystem in the best possible manner. Because right now, the landscape might be a little bit scattered, and it might be a challenge for a potential applicant to actually understand what is needed in terms of applying for funds from those various supporting mechanisms. So I think that's something we need to focus on in the future. We do have the elements in place, but more is needed in order to bring all that together as a common European support mechanism for aviation clean technologies.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the time. We are a bit short of time, but I think we still got the time to take a few questions from the audience, from the Slido. Can I ask for, can we change, we've got the screen with do we have some questions on the Slido? Okay. So let me think that one of the questions, the first question is, at the end of April 2023, new mandatory blending quotas for SAF and flights from the EU were set as part of the Eurofuel aviation initiatives. The quotas are 265%. Is it realistic that the EU can achieve these targets? I would ask for the opinion, answer that maybe Carlos from Repsol. Is it technically possible?
Well, as I explained, well, the 2025 and 2030 objective, I think that could be met with the current technology that is in place in the refineries and the greenfield plants that are building and would be in operation during the coming years. But to fulfill, to achieve the goals beyond 2030, we have to invest a lot in research and in technologies to be able to transform these new feedstocks that are different from lipidic to SAF. And of course, the combination of green hydrogen and CO2 will be one of the biggest potential technology, but still need research and development. So for me, we could achieve in the short and medium term, I think that the objectives are realistic. And for the long term, we have to put efforts in all the directions to achieve it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The second question, it is unlikely that the SAF will allow the emergence of truly sustainable low-carbon aviation because the production of SAF remains extremely demanding on the environment point of view and requires a lot of resources, space, and energy. Isn't the SAF an utopia? Maybe I will ask Jonas to ask that.
Yes, indeed. Very good and very relevant question to actually focus on the quantities of the SAF and what the SAF is. So I think it needs to be clear that SAF itself, it's not something that will release us from all the emissions outright. I mean, how we approach SAF is that there is still life cycle emissions embedded in the SAF production. So taking into account the feedstock, the transportation, the production of SAF, of course, the consumption of SAF on board of the aircraft, all this generates emissions. The emissions kind of reduction element comes from the fact that SAF is made not from fossil fuels, but it's made from biomass, or in the best case scenario, from CO2 captured from air, and then produced SAF through electrolysis, for example. But it's true that there are emissions embedded in the production of SAF, and it doesn't fully release us from the embedded CO2 emissions. But I believe that what we are trying to aim with all the sustainability criteria that comes embedded as a requirement for the SAF. So we cannot call anything as SAF. There are actually quite stringent criteria in terms of the feedstocks, what kind of feedstocks can be used, and also in terms of the emission reductions that are required on the life cycle basis. And this sustainability criteria is aimed to address exactly this question regarding the environmental credibility of the SAF. And if it turns out that there are issues with the current sustainability criteria, of course, criteria can always be revised in a more stringent manner. But that's the purpose of the criteria, to actually ensure that we will have actual emissions benefits without harming some other fields of the society.
Carlos.
Yeah, very quickly on this same question. So it's not just linked to the type of SAF and the quality and so on, but also the quantity, really. So once again, the bigger the aviation sector and the bigger the energy demand of the aviation sector, the more of an utopia that this could be, because we will need more resources, more energy, and so on. The smaller this energy demand, the best chance we have to meet the target. So it's really as difficult and as simple as that, I would say, to summarize.
Okay, thank you. I think we can take one more. There's this question about the point that when we expect that the unit price of hydrogen-based or SAF to match those of conventional fuels. We have the discussion, similar discussion before the panel with Carlos. And what's your perspective on that?
Well, I think, well, my opinion is, I understand that the price is one of the major worries for the people, but to talk about price today is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit tricky because the reference that we have today is reference based on very small volume of SAF, in a very, very small market. So we have to wait to have a real market of SAF. We have to wait to reach the balance between demand and capacity for production and supply. We need the time to be how the fuel suppliers compete each other and how the different technologies compete each other to have the real price of the SAF. So I think that it's very soon to talk about price. Just to give you a number, if I know that IATA have published a report this month talking about prices of SAF, and they talk about that the price of SAF is about 2 times the price of a conventional Jet A1. Well, if we cross this input with the input of the SAF mandate that we have to fulfill in 2025, the impact in the final fuel, in the blend of SAF with Jet A1, will be around 2% higher price in this blend to fulfill the objective in 2025. So it's not too much. But again, I said that we have to wait to have a real market of SAF to talk about prices.
Okay. Thank you very much. So let me now ask one final question to all the participants. What would be your top priority for the next 12 months to accelerate this green energy into the aviation? Let me start with Anna.
Thank you. Well, if we think in the short term, maybe first of all, to decarbonize the airport activity as soon as possible. Secondly, to provide green energy to all of consumers, all the consumers of the airport. And thirdly, to support all the activities to boost the production and the consumption of SAF, of sustainable aviation fuel.
Okay, thank you. Carlos?
Well, we have two main objectives or 2 priorities. The first one is to consolidate the capacity of production of SAF and the start of operation of the new plant in Cartagena. This is our main priority. And the second one is to continue to establishing a strategic partnership with those stakeholders that are present in all the value chain of the shaft, from the raw materials to the end users. So here I call for everyone who thinks that could add something in our projects for the collaboration. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Jonas?
Yes, from our side, the short-term priorities will obviously focus on Refuel EU implementation, so to make sure that agency is ready for this reporting role and also publishing the annual reports, that we have very good user-friendly systems in place to facilitate the reporting. Also that the flanking measures, so the clearinghouse and fuel standards work are progressing smoothly and on schedule. But also on the label side, I think there will be lots of work in the next 12 months ahead of us to ensure that the flight label is fit for purpose, it is backed by a robust methodology, so that is interesting for airlines and consumers to be used.
Thank you. Pablo?
Thank you. Obviously, of course, to deliver the ongoing projects, so to the results that are foreseen. But I would say, together with our Commission colleagues, it's very important that also we move up from the innovation into the deployment. And on this, I think we have to do more effort among the aviation stakeholders to grasp the opportunities in programs like Innovation Fund. So that's the point. Also, another important aspect is the feedback into the policies or into future regulations that can benefit from the wealth of data and results of research. And maybe something that is very important, looking not only in the short term. I mean, several honorable members of the European Parliament said, we may not realize now, but if we don't ensure a decent and continuous level of investment for collaborative research, for truly disruptive research, we may pay a high price in the future. Other parts of the world are investing on this, and we should not forget what has happened in other sectors. I originally came from the space sector, space launchers, and you have seen over the last years what had happened. Look at the automotive industry, where the combustion engines and cars from Europe were leading. We should not miss the real disruptive innovation. That is what's so important, not only the current incumbents in aviation, but the real, startups, new innovators, as we have witnessed today, that they have the opportunities also to scale up. There were references by the previous speaker, Olivier, about already at Stuttgart, some 20 years ago, some projects were going on electric aircraft. We were behind as well in terms of collaborative research. We have to make sure all together with all the member states representatives that are the ones ultimately deciding on the content of collaborative research to also ensure that the disruptive innovation is nurtured and maintained, in addition to demonstration programs with public-private partnerships that have been already presented yesterday. So that will be a kind of a little message I would like to convey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Carlos?
Yep. So we will keep advocating for a fair taxation and pricing of the aviation sector. So pushing for measures like a tax on kerosene, which today is completely exempt of taxes for international flights, extending the ETS to beyond the sort of only intra-EU flights, also to departing flights. We believe those are key building blocks of a transition to a greener sector. I don't know if that will happen in the next 12 months, but we will push for it. But number one, it will help bridge the gap between polluting solutions and the greener solutions that would be naturally exempt from those prices. And also, it would increase the amount of revenues, for example, through the ETS. So I hope that Pablo will be happy and also the beneficiaries of all those funds. But that will give us the opportunity to bridge that gap and support the green transition as well and the investment on disruptive technologies.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much for the input. So let me now sum up our panel. It will be a very short summary because we are short of time. I think we are on the good track, and I think we have like two perspectives. One perspective is a short-time perspective, and the second one is the long-term. In terms of the short-time perspective, I think we've got the solution, just around the corner. It's called SAF, and I think all of us, we know what to do. We've got a plan, and I think what's required is just the better cooperation among all the stakeholders. And I think the main challenge is for the aviation authorities, the stakeholder managers, and also the politicians to create the incentives. Maybe we should look at the US solution. I know we've got a lot of many US colleagues in the room for the lowering the cost and the price of SAF. But I think it's all about the closer cooperation. Then the bigger challenge, I think, is the long term. Because when we talk about the long terms, I think we need the new technologies. And that's the task for the engineers. So it's, I would say, less about the communication, less about the management. It's all about the designing new technologies. And I think what would be good, it would be great to cooperate among the stakeholders, engineers, but also the academic world. From my experience, I think it's very interesting to combine the, let's say, the real business life with the academic, with the students. We had this presentation from Volocopter. You know, it all started by the young guys. They are creative. They have a lot of ideas. So I think that should be the plan and the vision for the future. Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay, but I think we had a very, very interesting panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Piotr and all the panel. We're now going to take a break for coffee. Please can you be back here at 11:40, and we'll start again then. And we'll come around and nudge you so that we can start on time. Thank you.